productive cough. Now,
This call is now being recorded.
okay. Now, whenever we are going to talk about productive cough, what are the points you are going to tell? Now, cough. No, next slide. Next slide. The next slide, doctor. Dr. Vinod.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, cough is 3 months. It is insidious and onset and persistent in nature. What do you mean by the term persistent in nature?
Ma'am, the cough is not relieved by any medication, ma'am, and it persists throughout the day.
Throughout the day. Okay. Uh, uh, maybe persistent in nature. I don't think we can use that terminology. There is no aggravating or relieving factor for cough. So, which cough is associated with some aggravating or relieving factor? And
Asthma,
associated.
ma'am.
Okay.
Asthma.
Asthma. How is it? What is it? What variation?
Diurnal variation.
Diurnal variation will be there, ma'am.
Okay, very good. So when does it occur more? Asthma.
Night time, ma'am.
When time? What time?
Night time, ma'am. During the night, during sleep.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and yeah, some already we spoke of this farmers thing and all, no? Or people who go no, by Saturday, Sunday they become all right, but Monday when they start going and getting exposed to allergies, the cough may increase. No, that is what you are meaning. Okay, where do you get this postural variation?
Postural variation is seen in bronchiectasis, ma'am, and
Okay. What else?
for
Where else?
cough, I'm not sure. That's for sputum, ma'am, but for cough, I'm not sure.
Yeah, for sputum. Yeah, for cough, postural variation. Where else are you going to tell? No, I mean, we didn't talk so much about cough. What in associated with chest pain. So suppose cough is associated with chest pain. What is your impression?
Ma'am, it could be because of the forceful, violent cough. It could be due to the intercostal myalgia, ma'am.
Okay.
Pulmonary
So,
embolism.
Pleural diseases, ma'am. Pleural diseases, ma'am.
So the relevance of cough, which is there is a chest pain associated with cough, will come with the pleural disease. Otherwise, I don't think we have to put this aggravating relieving factor, postural or diurnal variation. All that you can bring it with cough with sputum. Okay, not associated with syncope. So much is not required. What I feel. Okay. So cough for 3 months duration, and it is associated with chest pain. Now, when you talk about associated, where is the chest pain?
Ma'am, in this case, chest pain is due to the myalgia, ma'am. So it was actually diffuse, not associated with any pleural. It was not pleuritic type, ma'am.
Okay, that is for us to decide. What did the patient say? Where is the chest pain? No, what I'm trying to tell you is, let us not get into trouble. No.
Okay, ma'am.
It is very much relevant to you that patient. Now you would have been given only a case scenario, right? Or
No,
how
ma'am.
did you take? What is this case, doctor? Finally, what diagnosis?
This is a case of secondary tuberculosis, ma'am.
We don't call secondary.
Post-primary, ma'am.
Okay. Post-primary is a pathological diagnosis. What exactly is your diagnosis? Clinical diagnosis.
Okay. Clinical diagnosis is actually cavitation along with consolidation also, ma'am.
Cavity with consolidation. Hey, oh my God. Nobody, I think from next time I'll give you a case scenario and then you present. So how did you take this? Some seniors gave you this case scenario. How did you take up this case?
Ma'am, actually there was no reference, ma'am. From the theory book I go through, from the clinical features I got to.
Okay, you just imagined your own. Okay, okay. No, Vinod, I think, no, it's holds good for all of you for this batch. Okay, I think, please get the case scenario the previous day itself. all of you. Like if on Monday, whoever the M1 is presenting, please get the case scenario from the concerned assistant or the chief or the registrar or something. Okay. Only if you have a case scenario, you can present. See, all of you are just in a learning curve, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, we'll continue. So there is sputum which is 3 months duration, moderate in quantity, yellow in color, mucopurulent in consistency. Okay. Now we'll talk about sputum production. Now how I would have presented is cough associated with the expectoration present for past 3 months, and you can immediately continue that the cough is insidious in the onset and the sputum is moderate in quantity. That is how you can do. You needn't write all this postural variation about. You talk only in terms with sputum. Okay. Now this sputum is moderate in quantity. Suppose if it is, what else you should have told? Now here you have missed foul smelling. Have you added or are you going to add later?
I've added, ma'am.
The next slide, is it?
No, ma'am, it's at the bottom. It is not foul smelling.
Not foul smelling. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't see. Okay, not foul smelling. Okay. So sputum is mucopurulent. Okay. So what are all the colors of sputum you can get? What are all the things you can get? One, it can be mucoid.
Sputum can be, the consistency can be mucoid, mucopurulent, or frankly purulent, ma'am.
Okay. So here you say it is a mucopurulent in consistency. Okay. Then
Yes,
based on colors, what are the sputum you know of?
ma'am, sputum can be of,
yeah. Klebsiella pneumonia.
ma'am, it can be rusty.
Rusty
It can be rusty in color, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Rusty, where will you get?
Typical pneumonia, ma'am, pneumococcal pneumonia.
Pneumococcal pneumonia. In Klebsiella, what will you get?
We'll get red currant jelly sputum, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Black color?
Black color is seen in occupational lung disorders, ma'am, silicosis.
Coal workers pneumonia.
Coal workers pneumonia.
Very good. So that you should say. Now, suppose the sputum quantity is this is moderate. Where will you get a large amount of quantity of sputum?
Large amounts can be seen in conditions like bronchiectasis or lung abscess.
In other words, suppurative lung disease. Okay. Yeah, that is what you are trying. Pneumolar in shape when split into sputum cup. What do you mean by that?
Ma'am, the classical sputum of tuberculosis takes the shape of a coin when it's split into the sputum cup. Ma'am.
Okay. Now,
So that's what is called as pneumolar in shape.
Okay. Whenever we are presenting the case, we try to keep it in a very simple English language. You know, to be a colloquial thing. The patient tells us. Okay. So no patient will tell us that it was a pneumolar in shape and all. Okay. I think you can better avoid that.
Okay.
Now, what is the 3-layered sputum of bronchiectasis?
Ma'am, it will be mucoid at the top, ma'am, mucopurulent at the middle, and purulent at the bottom.
Okay, all debris will be there in the bottom, frothy in the top, and it will be that mucopurulent layer in between. Okay, and it will be foul smelling, especially a patient with lung abscess or bronchiectasis. No, when you're going for rounds, you go near the bed itself, it will be so foul smelling. So now, where will you get this postural variation? You have already answered, that is bronchiectasis or lung abscess. Okay, diurnal variation. Now, what is that? Now, when there is a cough, it can be due to cardiovascular system. It is going to be due to your respiratory, which can be due to your upper respiratory or lower respiratory, right? There are so many possibilities when the patient is having cough. Apart from that, what are the other causes of cough? Okay, cardiovascular causes of cough. Yeah, obstruction means what? Laryngeal.
Yes, ma'am, laryngeal obstruction.
Yes, for body you can have. Yes, then causes of cough.
Even mediastinal irritation, pleural irritation can cause cough, ma'am.
Intestinal irritation, pleural irritation. Then what else? Anything
Upper
relevant?
gastrointestinal,
GERD, ma'am.
GI. Yes, ma'am, GERD.
GERD. Very common cause. Okay, patient will come only with dry cough. The most common cause will be GERD, which we will be missing, and we'll be treating, we'll be loading them with all this what do you call that, Avil and all that stuff. When all you have to do is treat the GERD. So that is very important. In cardiovascular, when will you get cough? What is the typical cough you'll get in cardiovascular?
In mitral stenosis, ma'am, when there is a pulmonary edema.
Yes. When there is pulmonary edema, of course, cough. What is the sputum you will get in pulmonary edema?
Pink frothy sputum, ma'am.
Pink frothy sputum you will get in pulmonary edema. So, cough usually, whenever there is orthopnea, that is patient is lying down, patient may become dyspneic and patient can have cough. Okay, you otherwise call it as, you can have even cardiac asthma, relevant like bronchial asthma. As we already say, bronchial asthma also is more common in the night. Even the cardiac component, this pulmonary edema, that left ventricular failure thing also can occur more in the night. Okay, next slide. We'll carry on. Continue. Next slide, Dr. Vinod.
Yes, ma'am.
Please present.
Hemoptysis for the duration of 3 months, 3 to 4 episodes per day. The severity is moderate and it is associated with fresh blood, and it is also associated with purulent sputum.
Okay, when there is a hemoptysis, define hemoptysis.
Hemoptysis is the coughing up of blood.
So what is the closest differential when there is hemoptysis?
It can be hematemesis, ma'am, which is the vomiting of blood.
Yes, how are you going to differentiate whether it is hemoptysis or hematemesis?
Ma'am, coughing will produce hemoptysis, whereas nausea and vomiting will cause hematemesis, ma'am.
Okay.
We can differentiate it based on the pH. Hematemesis, the pH will be acidic, ma'am. In hemoptysis, it will be alkaline.
Okay.
Based on the color, ma'am, hemoptysis, the blood will be bright red in color, whereas in hematemesis, it will be brownish or black in color, ma'am.
Okay, brownish, not black. No.
Brownish in color, ma'am.
Why is it brownish?
Due to the formation of acid hematine, ma'am.
Very good. Okay, then food particles will be there in hematemesis but will not be there in hemoptysis. Now, in a real life scenario, whenever you see a patient, how typically they say is, இருமல் வந்தது அப்படியே வாந்தி எடுத்தா வாந்தில நிறைய ரத்தம் வந்தது. That is how they will give history even for hemoptysis and hematemesis. So it is very important and to differentiate whether it is hemoptysis or hematemesis. Next is history wise associated more with cough and all, and other histories may suggest, because your treatment is going to be very different if it is a hemoptysis and if it is a hematemesis. So it's very important to differentiate. And associated with purulent sputum, you need to tell here. Okay. More relevant will be if there is a blood streaked sputum. Where will you get a blood streaked sputum? In pharyngitis. Okay. Then when do you call massive hemoptysis?
A massive hemoptysis is when the amount of blood coughed up per day is more than 600 ml, ma'am.
Okay, 400 to 600 ml. Okay, or a single episode is more than 200 ml. So it will that is more than 10% of your blood volume. So you call it as a massive hemoptysis. So can you tell me some respiratory causes of hemoptysis?
Hemoptysis can occur due to infections, ma'am, like in the case of tuberculosis or lung abscess, bronchiectasis, or fungal infections. Then there can also be connective tissue disorders.
What connective tissue disorder?
Wegener's granulomatosis or
All that is for cavity,
Goodpasture
I think,
syndrome, ma'am.
no? Okay,
Ma'am?
okay. So when, what more important? Malignancy? Bronchogenic carcinoma?
Yes, ma'am. Malignancy is there.
Yes, sir. So there are so many causes of hemoptysis. So what I'm telling is when you talk of tuberculosis, now tuberculosis is going to affect all parts of your body. It can be pulmonary, extrapulmonary. Even in pulmonary, usually when there's associated cavity, no, that is the time you will have hemoptysis. So there are so many things, like you'll have to a bit more specific when you're talking of tuberculosis causing hemoptysis. Okay. Okay, we'll go to the next point. Tell me about the fever.
Fever for the duration of 2 weeks. It was a low-grade fever. It was insidious in onset and remittent in nature, which appears late each afternoon and then subsiding.
So that's
It was temporarily relieved. Yes, ma'am. Temporarily relieved by taking paracetamol, and it was also associated with the night sweats, but it was not associated with any chills or rigor.
So all this points out to
Tuberculosis, ma'am.
okay. So tuberculous fever will be this low-grade fever associated with night sweats, the typical history. So what are all the types of fever you know of?
Ma'am, continuous fever, ma'am. Relapsing fever.
Relapsing fever.
Stepladder pattern fever.
Excellent. Stepladder pattern. Then
Intermittent fever, ma'am.
intermittent fever. Okay. Now intermittent fever, tell me one of the causes.
Malaria, ma'am.
Okay, malaria. So it will be, what is the typical feature of a malarial fever?
With chills and rigor.
Intermittent, ma'am.
Okay, fever with chills and rigors. That is the typical intermittent fever. Relevant to respiratory system? Where will you get fever with chills, rigors in respiratory cough? When there is a pneumonia, okay, you may get fever with chills. Then apart from that, urinary tract infection, you will get fever with chills. Okay, intermittent. Where will you get continuous fever?
I'm not sure, ma'am.
Lobar pneumonia, ma'am.
Lobar pneumonia, you get a high grade fever with chills. Okay, continuous fever. Okay, you can get in lobar pneumonia, respiratory cause, or you get in an enteric fever. How are you going to differentiate whether it's a continuous fever? Yes. Tell me, or a remittent fever? How are you going to differentiate whether it's a continuous fever or remittent fever? In both, the spike will not touch the baseline. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. See, something you should know everything about fever. Okay, fever, one, it is important in your clinics also. Two, all your infectious diseases. In that fever component is very important. Okay. In remittent fever, usually the variation will be more than 1 degree Celsius. Whereas in continuous fever, the variation will be lesser than that. Okay. That is, in enteric fever, you'll get a continuous fever, high-grade fever. Remittent fever, where can you get? Okay. Relapsing fever, where will you get?
Borrelia.
Borrelia.
Borrelia, okay. Where else?
Leptospirosis,
What
ma'am.
about dengue? Huh? Leptospirosis. Excellent.
Dengue, ma'am.
Excellent. Dengue, what do you call that fever?
Saddleback.
Breakbone
Bone
fever.
break. Bone break.
Breakbone, saddleback. Even there, it is a typical pattern. There'll be a high-grade fever. It will subside. After 2 days, again the fever starts. Okay, that saddleback fever. And why it's breakbone? Because there's so much myalgias and arthralgias associated with it, with the retroorbital pain and all that. Okay. So I'm just touching about all the symptom analysis. That is why it's I'm just going. Okay, continue. Next.
There was a history of significant loss of weight, around 10 kgs in the past 3 months. The patient has also experienced loss of appetite in the past 3 months. There is history of night sweats, history of malaise and fatigue. There's no history of dysphagia or no history of hoarseness of voice.
Okay. Apart from tuberculosis, where will you get this night sweats and all?
Hodgkin's lymphoma, ma'am.
Lymphoma, ma'am.
Excellent. Oh yes, Hodgkin's lymphoma. What is that fever called as? Pellepstein.
Pellepstein.
Yes, what is the Pellepstein fever?
Fever would be there for 3 days, and then a febrile period for 10 days, and again it would come on. It's a kind of
Excellent.
relapsing fever.
A kind of a relaxing fever, but it goes on for for more than months together. Almost for past 6 months, if you get the history of the patient, typically there is as you said, 3-4 days or then the fever subsided. Then after over 2 to 3 weeks, again I had fever. Along with that, I had this loss of weight, loss of appetite. So this Hodgkin's lymphoma, one thing we should never forget, and of course when there is history of night sweats, even without fever, they may have history of night sweats. So that is the importance. Okay, next.
D symptoms.
Continue. Vinod, continue, doctor.
Yes, ma'am.
Continue.
Past history, the patient is known to be diabetic and hypertensive for the past 13 years.
Vinod, is the presenting illness over?
Yes, ma'am, it's over, ma'am.
See, now, previous slide. Please go to the previous slide. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you have given me all the positive history, Vinod. What are the negative history you want to give in the presenting illness?
Ma'am, negative history I've asked to rule out any malignancy, ma'am. So I asked for dysphagia and hoarseness of voice.
Okay. Hoarseness of voice and dysphagia. That is relevant to respiratory system. Right?
Yes, ma'am. Regarding cardiovascular system, the patient didn't seem to have any symptoms, ma'am. So I didn't ask any.
No. See, whenever you are presenting the case, see, you now the main exercise of presenting a case is that you're telling us what all you have been analyzing. So whenever you are going to present a case, so you are going to talk about chief complaints, then history of presenting illness. Now, when you are talking about the history of presenting illness, you mention all the positive points. Once your positive points are over, you are going to tell relevant negative history. Now, this patient had fever, cough with expectoration, hemoptysis, and what is the other positive complaint? Oh, that's all, no?
That was it, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any history of breathlessness?
No, ma'am. There wasn't any history of breathlessness.
You have to tell, right? No history of breathlessness. Is there any history of pedal edema, facial puffiness, abdominal distension? Is there any history of oliguria? Is it important or not important?
Yes, ma'am. It's important, ma'am.
See, breathlessness can occur even in respiratory and it can occur in cardiovascular system. Now, this patient has had cough with expectoration for past 2 months. Suppose the patient has breathlessness. So, if there is a breathlessness, what is the grading you are going to use in a respiratory system with breathlessness?
My modified medical research council grading, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So, when you are going to present a case, no history of breathlessness is very significant. Now, whatever the problem this patient seems to be having, the patient is not so much compromised to cause breathlessness, right? So there is no history of breathlessness, no history of what is the importance of abdominal distension, pedal edema, and facial puffiness?
It will relate to volume overload conditions, ma'am, effusions.
Okay, very good. Volume overload due to?
Cardiac failure, ma'am.
Okay, one due to cardiac. Now still we want to rule out the cardiac, respiratory, other causes also. So for cardiac, we are doing. Can respiratory be associated with the pedal edema, abdominal distension, facial puffiness? Somebody
Cor
can
pulmonale.
answer.
Carpulmonale.
Cor pulmonale. Now this is going to give us a clue. It is an advanced stage. Okay. Means in the sense that cor pulmonale.
Okay.
When does it? What is the definition of cor pulmonale?
Ma'am, right ventricle hypertrophy, ma'am, due to chronic conditions of the lung.
Lung pathology causing right heart failure. Okay, when there is some pulmonary hypertension or whatever, it is going to cause a right heart failure is your cor pulmonale. So that is very important. Okay, no history of these negative history is very important. No history of chest pain, no history of palpitation, no history of epigastric pain. Okay, now you said some chest pain you told. You want to bring it out.
Yes,
so how can you bring it out? There is history of malaise with fatigue, and so that fatigability he was feeling as a chest pain. That is what you are trying to tell me. That cough associated with chest pain, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that is a better way. So after the positive history, we have to tell the relevant negative history. Usually all of you have a pro forma, right? Which you keep following. So just go through that. Whenever you are presenting any system, no, you have to first tell the relevant negative, first relevant positive history, relevant negative history relevant to that system, and negative history for others. Now, can an abdomen cause this sort of a complaint? Abdomen, any problems?
No, ma'am.
No. Why not? No. Okay, CA colon with secondaries in the lung.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. So there is all the systems. So we cannot be very fixed. Now see, no patient comes and tells you, எனக்கு lungல பிரச்சனை இருக்கு, எனக்கு heartல பிரச்சனை இருக்கு, எனக்கு வயிறுல பிரச்சனை இருக்கு. No. They'll come with a lot of, the first thing they'll say, எனக்கு கை கால் வலிக்குது. That's all they're going to tell you. Usually when does a patient come to the hospital? When he is not able to carry on his daily activity. No, all these people know they are going to their job, they are going to their livelihood. Even one day they miss their livelihood, they are not going to get the food. So even you and me, when do we go and see a professional for it? When we are not able to do our regular activity. So by then there may be a lot of things which will have happened. So we should always be open mind when we are examining or when we are taking the history. In fact, a patient may be, they would have referred you, this is the case of bronchial asthma, kindly do the needful, they would refer to you. But you should not just take it on a face value. That means you will be missing a lot of points. Unless you take a good history, which includes the positive and the negative, you will not miss which system is involved. Okay. So all this negative history has to be added. Okay, now we'll go to the past history. Okay, go to the past history.
The patient is a known diabetic and hypertensive for the past 13 years, but he has not been compliant to the drugs or insulin for the past 4 years. There has been history of recurrent respiratory tract infections in the past. No history of bronchial asthma or any other major illnesses.
Okay.
No history of previous TB infection.
Okay.
No history of aspiration, exantematis fever, tooth extraction, tonsillectomy, any allergy, trauma, or exposure to STDs. And there is no history of any previous surgeries or hospitalization.
Okay. So here he is a known diabetic and hypertensive for past 13 years. And he is a poor compliance of drugs. That's what you are trying to tell. Now, what is the importance of diabetes with RS?
Ma'am? Importance of diabetes with?
Yes.
Ma'am, I couldn't understand your question, ma'am.
Now, suppose a patient comes with a respiratory complaint and he is a known diabetic. Okay, now a diabetic patient
Yes,
comes
ma'am.
with a tuberculosis. How is it going to be different from a person who is non-diabetic with tuberculosis?
Diabetes is a state of is an immunocompromised state, ma'am. So the patient will be prone for recurrent infections.
Will be prone for?
Recurrent infections, especially in the respiratory tract,
Okay,
urinary tract
recurrent
infections.
Okay, very good. So they are immunocompromised, so they'll be more prone for a lot of infections. Now, usually tuberculosis, which lobe does tuberculosis affect usually?
Usually, it affects the upper lobes, ma'am.
Okay, why affects the upper lobe?
Due to the due to good
Yeah, it requires. Yes,
due to
yes,
good
tell me.
ventilation in the upper lobes,
So that is
and
your
tuberculosis
common.
is
Yes, tuberculosis.
tuberculosis is an aerobic bacteria, ma'am. So it prefers the well ventilated part of the lungs.
Yes, whereas that is what our routine teaching for a well immunocompetent individual. Whereas in an immunocompromised person, you can get a very different presentation, like in a HIV patient, no? Like that, or itself, even in diabetic, they can present in a very abnormal presentation. You can have a cavity in the lower lobe. You can have such sort of a presentation. So a diabetic with this sort of history, you should become very careful. Okay. So that is what I mean by saying that the importance of diabetes. Now there is history of recurrent respiratory tract infection. Now how long? The duration is very important. Okay.
Okay.
You cannot just open statement. Is it since childhood or past 10 years or past 5 years or past 1 year? Okay.
Okay.
So what do you want to qualify it more? How do you want to qualify it? Okay,
Ma'am, I
Vinod.
wasn't sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so no, you understood what I'm trying to tell.
Yes, ma'am. I understood, ma'am.
Yeah, suppose if it is since childhood, then we'll have to think of a long-term problems. If it is only for past 1 year, that means he is becoming more and more like a immunocompromised, getting a lot of infection, or it can be a TB which is going on and off, and now he has come within a very bad shape. Okay, that is the thing. Now there is no history of bronchial asthma. Okay, no major illness, no history of previous TB infection. There is history of aspiration. What is exactly you're going to ask? History of aspiration.
Ma'am, history of aspiration is asked to know if there is any.
Normally, okay, I'll give you a clue. Normally, a conscious person will not aspirate, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Alcoholic, ma'am.
So, alcoholic, excellent. So, is there any history of alcohol intake followed by some fall or whatever it is? So, alcohol history is very important. Then, what are the other histories for aspiration?
Seizures, ma.
Near
Seizures,
drowning.
ma.
Near drowning, seizures, excellent, excellent. Then,
Ma'am, previous surgeries during when the patient was in general anesthesia, there might be an episode of
Yes.
aspiration.
Yes, very good. Now you can write no history of aspiration, but this is a question when it is asked, you should know what are all the questions we asked. Now aspiration, when a conscious person will not aspirate. So when who are the people who aspirate? So these two, it's a very important history. Unless you ask, they'll not tell. You say no. So he may be an epileptic, seizure disorder patient. So that unless you ask, you may not. Then alcoholic, he was found in the roadside, next day only we brought him home. So they'll have a lot of micro aspirations. So that is the important thing about aspiration. Now what is the importance of exanthematous fever?
Measles history, ma'am.
Viral respiratory infections, ma'am.
Okay. It is more than this viral, it is the post-viral, they become immunocompromised and they are more prone for infections. Okay. That is the importance of this exanthematous fever. Tooth extraction, sometimes then aspirate the tooth. Okay. So that may lead on to your consultation and later on. Similarly about this tonsillectomy. So allergies, trauma, all that. No, everything has importance. You should know when we are questioning what is the relevance of each history you are going to ask. Okay, next slide.
Ma'am, what is meant by microaspiration, ma'am?
Okay, now see, now normal aspiration, as I said, when the patient is having seizures and all, no, they may aspirate a large quantity. Okay, the stomach content may fully come into the lungs. But whereas in this alcoholics, no, they may not go exactly for unconsciousness. They'll go for altered sensorium. So that time, there are some quantity of sputum or something which will be as a microaspirate. So in the short term, they may not have problems, but for long term, they may land up with even bronchitis or whatever. That is what I meant by microaspirate. Okay. Okay, continue, doctor.
Family history. There is family history of diabetes and hypertension. The patient's father died of TB 10 years ago. No family history of bronchial asthma or any allergic diseases. And there's no history of any similar complaints in the family members at present.
Okay, father died of TB 10 years ago. Now, tuberculosis is a disease which occurs throughout the body. So, what exactly did the father die of? Was it a meningitis, tuberculous meningitis?
Ma'am, I wasn't sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No. What I mean to say is, we are just talking of a scenario. Even in a scenario, or when you're going to ask patient, TB nalla enga appa settu poitaru 10 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி. But then you will have to ask, ரொம்ப இருமல், சளி அந்த மாதிரி வந்து செத்து போனாரா இல்ல வேற ஏதாவது பிரச்சனை இருந்ததா? Even bone TB they could have had. Yeah, they could have spinal cord issues, spinal tuberculosis. Then, or it could be a GI tuberculosis. So anything could have happened. So that that history is very important. So which is the most infective form of a tuberculosis? Okay, how does the tuberculosis spread?
Through droplet infection, ma'am.
Droplet infection, right? Very good. Now, so it is because of inhalation of the droplets, they become prone. So, which group of patients is going to cough out a large amount of tubercle bacilli?
Patients with active disease, ma'am.
Okay, active disease. Okay, but what active disease?
Laryngeal TB, ma'am.
Pardon?
Laryngeal TB, ma'am.
Excellent. So one is laryngeal TB, then when there is an endobronchial TB, and third, or rather that the first thing will be patient with cavity. Okay.
Yes,
patient with cavity will cough out a lot of tubercle bacilli. Okay. And usually it will be positive. Sputum will be positive. So these are the group of patients who are going to cough out so much amount of tubercles, the bacilli. Okay, that is important. So whenever we ask, is there any history of contact with open TB? That is the exact history we ask. Any history of contact of open TB, pulmonary tuberculosis in the family. Now this patient's father died of TB 10 years ago. Now, when we are going to ask history of TB, so few people say, TB no irundhathu settu poitaru. But some people, they will not be so, clear enough. So that time you should ask whether he was taking tablets for a long time, whether it was a, ATT, anti-tuberculosis treatment, was they taking the, how do they, do you have any idea how do they give this anti-tuberculosis drugs in the government program?
The DOTS regimen, ma'am.
Pardon?
Currently there is a Nixay program.
Yes. Tell.
Directly observed treatment strategy, ma'am.
Yeah, so they usually ask the patient to come to the center, or there are some workers who will go to their place, they give that strip, they ask them to take, and they ask them to take tablet in front of them. Okay. Previously, maybe 10 years ago now, they will be given a strip, some 7 tablets together, take it daily, or take it in alternate days, whatever it is. So all that is a very important history. Unless you ask for it, they will not be able to tell you. Okay, continue. Personal history.
Okay. Personal history, the patient is a chronic smoker on an average of 10 cigarettes a day for the past 15 years. He's also an alcoholic, consumes 300 to 400 ml once in a week. Otherwise, the sleep, bowel, and bladder movements are normal.
What is back here?
Ma'am?
Back here. SPM, no? I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Pack
20
years.
cigarettes per day for 1 year is called 1 pack year, is it? Am I correct? 1 pack of cigarettes, 1 pack contains 20, and that 20 per day for 1 year is called 1 pack year. So, how many pack years? They are more prone for malignancy. It is 40 pack years. Okay. 40, excellent. 40 pack years, they are more prone for malignancy. So, what are all the problems which can be associated with this smoking? One is, of course, malignancy, the most dreaded thing. Apart from that,
COPD, ma'am.
COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Then nicotine per se, if they are not smoking, but other ways of using, they are more prone for oral malignancy. There are so many issues associated with it. Alcohol relevances, they may take a binge of alcohol, they may aspirate and all that stuff. No, that is the importance. Okay, next, doctor, continue.
Shall I go to the next slide, ma'am? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Occupational history, the patient is a corporation worker. His workplace is not situated near any factories or cotton mills.
Okay.
Drug history, he has been taking antidiabetic and antihypertensive drugs since diagnosed, but has not been complained for the past 4 years. Contact history, there's history of contact with a known TB case in the form of a family member.
Okay. Continue.
Summary, ma'am. Mr. Sasikumar presented with complaints of cough with expectoration, hemoptysis, and fever with varying rise in temperature. Yes, 53-year-old.
Yeah.
There's history of significant loss of weight and appetite, along with fatigue and malaise. There's history of contact with a known case of TB, and a family history of death due to TB. There's also history of chronic smoking and alcoholism. So the most probable system involved in this case is a respiratory system. Now.
Okay. So why do you say it is a respiratory system?
Based on the chief complaints, ma'am, cough, hemoptysis, cough with expectoration and hemoptysis.
Cough with expectoration with hemoptysis and fever and loss of weight and loss of appetite, no? With this history. Can it be a cardiovascular cough? He's a smoker.
Yes, ma'am, he's a smoker, but I'm not sure how is it relevant to.
Yes, no history of. So for that, in your history of present illness, you should have given all those negative history. Okay.
Negative
history. Is
history.
there any? So in that negative history, no history of wheeze is very important. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Now, so we are thinking in terms of respiratory system. In respiratory system, is it a parenchymal involvement or a pleural involvement? Or an airway involvement? Now, these are the three things which you can have with the respiratory system.
Okay, ma'am.
What do you think? And anybody else can help you?
It could be an airway disorder, ma'am, since there is expectoration.
Oh, it is not like bronchiectasis means it will have massive, expectoration, large quantities.
Pleural involvement is excluded. Pleural involvement is ruled out because of loss of pleuritic chest pain and
so there is
a typical pattern.
So there is no. So pleura is ruled out. It can still be, as the doctor rightly pointed out, very good. It can be an airway. or it can be a what? Parenchymal, right?
Parenchymal, yes, ma'am.
It can be either airway or it can be a parenchymal. For airway, what is the definition of chronic bronchitis?
Ma'am, the definition of chronic bronchitis is when the patient has a chronic cough for more than 3 months for 2 consecutive years, ma'am. Chronic cough with
Consecutive years.
expectoration.
Chronic. So we are having maybe this first year of chronic cough with expectoration. He is a smoker beyond that, top of that. But is there any history of wheeze? Now that is important for airway. You should have some amount of wheeze and all. So maybe it may develop later. So still airway is possible. But we are sure that it can be parenchymal because there is cough, expectoration, moderate expectoration with hemoptysis, right? And a background of fever with the
Ma'am,
temperature. Yes.
I have one doubt. How is wheeze, ma'am? What is the pathology behind the wheeze? Like, how does wheeze occur? Why does wheeze occur, ma'am?
Why does wheeze occur? Why should it occur? You tell me. What happens? Bronchospasm?
Yes, ma'am. Wheeze occurs when there is an obstruction to the airflow, ma'am, especially during expiration.
Yeah, one, it can be due to bronchospasm. Which condition you will get bronchospasm?
Asthma.
Asthma. Okay. In COPD, what happens is it is an inflammation. Yeah. Because of the smoking and all the damaging substances which is going to be associated with your nicotine and other contents, what will happen? There will be inflammation more of, all the liquid and all that will be there, which may cause a narrow pathway. When the air is going to flow through a narrow pathway, you are going to get a wheeze. Have I cleared out, doctor?
Okay.
Yeah.
So in
Okay,
TB or consolidation diseases, we can get wheeze, ma'am.
No. Why should you get wheeze in a consolidation? What is consolidation?
There is accumulation of exudates and
Consolidation involves the alveoli.
alveoli.
Excellent. So, diseases when medium size and a small size bronchi, when that is going to get involved. So, where you are going to get, one is asthma, one is your COPD, and you can get when there is an obstruction, which can be a mechanical obstruction or it can be a dynamic obstruction. Okay, I think detail for you. With what I have taught you, this is just a beginner's class, what is going on for you. Okay, but there is so much beyond that when we talk about wheeze. So go for your general exam.
Ma'am, I have a doubt, ma'am. Can wheeze be a complaint that the patient tells us, ma'am?
Sure. You ask any patient, what is that? How this can be a wheeze? It can be a complaint.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, continue.
Shall I proceed, ma'am?
Yes, please proceed.
General examination. The patient is not comfortable at rest and is poorly cooperative. The patient appears toxic and is tachypnic at rest. The patient is conscious, comfortable. Patient is conscious and well oriented to time, place, and person.
The first line and the third line is opposite to each other.
Ma'am, sorry, ma'am. Editing issues, ma'am.
Okay, so nice, man. Okay, we know how is the patient dyspneic and tachypnic. See, so far in history taking, I told you it should be your patient, it should be in language, in a general, in a patient's language. But once it comes to your examination, it is going to be you can talk. Now, patient is not comfortable. No, not comfortable can be a lot of things. Now, you are presenting to me, you may feel this. So there are so many, it's a very vague term in other words. So patient is conscious, patient is oriented to time, place and patient, and patient is dyspneic, tachypneic. In respiratory system, why is he not comfortable? Because he is either having dyspnea, tachypnea, or he is comfortable. Comfortable means he is not dyspneic or not tachypneic. Okay, it should be very clear cut in what you are telling. Now, what is dyspnea and what is tachypnea?
Okay. Ma'am, dyspnea is the unpleasant awareness of one's own breathing, ma'am.
Okay.
Whereas tachypnea is increase in the respiratory rate, which can be observed by the clinician.
Yes, excellent. So patient is dyspneic and tachypneic. So is your patient dyspneic and tachypneic? Simple question to you.
Okay, ma'am. Can both be at the same time, ma'am? Or maybe can the patient be tachypneic but not dyspneic?
Yes, it can be tachypneic but not dyspneic, but patient can be dyspneic and tachypneic.
Okay.
The patient enhance.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So now patient is tachypneic. Okay. Patient,
Yes,
you have not given any history of breathlessness in your history at all. And you are going to give your final diagnosis as fibrocavity, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
So fibrocavity does not occur in a day or so. Usually patients will be malnourished and patients will have some amount of dyspnea and tachypnea, and in the history wise there will be history of breathlessness around grade 2 to 3. Okay, so that is how the usual correlation goes on. Of course, you have not seen the patient, and so you have just built up on your own. So, but usually,
Ma'am, I actually took this case from the internet, ma'am.
Okay, internet. Okay, all this was from net, exactly as it's in the net you have put, right? Or is it somebody else presented and that case you have put? No, it's just for interest, that I'm not going to penalize you or something.
No, ma'am. I actually modified it according to my diagnosis, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's have a learning thing. See, when you're going to see the patient, there will be a lot of things which we may not be able to explain. Now, when you're going to really see a patient, there will be few points which will be for. There may be few points which you will not be able to explain. But that does not mean that you should always modify. Okay? Whatever is there, we are going to put forth, and we are going to best explain what has happened. Now, this is only to teach you. Okay, you are doing an excellent job. But whenever we are going to be bedside, let's be as truthful as possible when we are going to see the patient. Okay. Now this patient is tachypneic. Okay, we'll continue. Otherwise, patient cannot be comfortable when patient is tachypneic. Okay. Patient appears toxic and tachypneic at rest. Usually patient toxic, tachypneic, dyspneic, all that occurs when the patient is having pneumonic consolidation and then either. In a patient usually with a fibrocavity which you are presenting, usually the patient may be having some amount of dyspnea and tachypnea, but otherwise patient will be okay. Okay. Moderately built and poorly nourished. Okay. Now continue. Pallor is observed. Continue.
Pallor is observed in the lower palpebral conjunctiva, nails, and mucous membranes of the oral cavity. No icterus cyanosis, clubbing, pedal edema, or generalized lymphadenopathy. No signs of Horner syndrome. No external markers of TB or no external markers of HIV were observed.
Okay. Now, clubbing with relevance to RS. Tell me, clubbing, what conditions is RS, respiratory system, is going to cause clubbing?
Fibrotic conditions of the lungs, ma'am.
What fibrotic
Suppurative
conditions?
conditions and
What?
suppurative conditions and malignancy, ma'am. Chronic suppurative and malignancies.
So, suppurative lung diseases. What are the suppurative lung diseases? Tell me one by one.
Lung abscess, ma'am. Bronchiectasis.
Lung abscess, bronchiectasis.
Empyema, ma'am.
Empyema, excellent. Okay, then what malignancy?
Bronchoalveolar carcinoma, ma'am.
Bronchogenic carcinoma. Okay, bronchogenic carcinoma. Then
Metastasis to lung.
No. Metastasis to lung will not cause clubbing. Interstitial lung disease?
COPD, ma'am.
Okay. COPD will not cause clubbing. Okay. Okay. Well, how do you grade clubbing?
Ma'am, clubbing is graded into 4 grades, ma'am.
Okay.
The first grade is when there is the obliteration of the Shamrock's window, ma'am.
So, okay. Number 2, grade 2.
Grade 2 is known as
First is
parrot.
observation of the bed. Second grade is your fluctuation positive. Third grade is parrot peaking or drumstick appearance.
Drumstick
Grade
appearance.
4 is
Hypertrophic
grade 2
osteoarthropathy,
is
ma'am.
hypertrophic pulmonary osteoarthropathy. Now,
Arthropathy, yes.
all of you, for all of you, I'm telling, you should be thorough with the grades of clubbing. And you should be thorough with the causes of clubbing. That is respiratory cause, abdomen cause, RS cause. You should be thorough. This is a very, basic question which will be asked in all your clinics. Then, what is the cause for clubbing?
Ma'am, clubbing occurs most commonly due to the increased proliferation of fibroblast at the distal phalanx, ma'am.
So, what theory they give?
The theory is based on the fact that platelet-derived growth factor secretion due to the accumulation of megakaryocytes.
Okay, so hypoxia, which is going to cause this problem. Okay. When do you get hypertrophic pulmonary osteoarthropathy? What condition? Anybody?
I'm not sure. Ma'am.
Full-thickness carcinoma,
Carcinoma.
AV malformation.
Neurofibroma.
Bronchogenic carcinoma. Okay, that is number 1. Apart from that, as you said, neurofibroma and all are other rare causes. AV malformations and all are rare causes. Now, how are you going to clinically make out whether there is hypertrophic pulmonary osteoarthropathy?
Subperiosteal newborn formation.
Okay, that is X-ray, doctor. Bedside.
Pain in distal ends of long bones.
Painful swelling.
Painful.
So when you palpate it, okay, and you should see for the thickening and the tenderness. Okay.
Tenderness.
Along with your drumstick appearance and all, if there is a thing, we call it as a hypertrophic pulmonary osteoarthropathy. Okay.
Okay.
You should see, we are all clinicians and we are going to do bedside evaluation. Okay. Now, lymphadenopathy, there is no generalized lymphadenopathy. Tell me the lymphatic drainage of lung and lymphatic drainage of pleura.
Ma'am, the cervical group of lymph nodes, ma'am.
Okay.
And also the mediastinal group, ma'am. Pretracheal, paratracheal, hilar lymph nodes.
Okay. Can somebody tell me in a very clearly anatomy?
Ma'am, the right lung and the left lower lobe is supplied to the right supraclavicular node, and the left upper lobe is going to the left supraclavicular node.
Excellent, doctor. Pleura? Pleura drains into dash node. MCQ. All of you are MCQ doctors.
Maxillary lymph nodes, ma'am. Cervical pleura.
Axillary node. Now, if there is an enlarged left supraclavicular node, what do you call it as?
Virchow's
node.
sign. Virchow's node.
What sign? Troy?
Troisier sign.
Troy's sign, ma'am.
Okay. Now, why is it Troy's sign? This node does not only drain your left upper lobe, it also drains your
From the abdomen, ma'am.
abdomen. So GI malignancy, there will be left supraclavicular node enlargement. So when you are going to see for the node, you should know if this node is enlarged, what is the possibility? Now when do you call it as a significant lymphadenopathy? Significant lymphadenopathy.
Greater than 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeter, ma'am.
Excellent. So inguinal group, then you are going to talk about the cervical group, then the axillary group. So inguinal group, because there is, you are always prone for now injuries in the legs and all, no? So it should be more than 1.5 to 2. In your cervical, 1 to 1.5 centimeter. In your axillary, 1 centimeter. Okay. So these, if it is above that, we call it as a significant lymphadenopathy. So whatever it is, you have to be very clear. So there is no significant lymphadenopathy. When you are telling, you should know why you are telling that. Okay. So we spoke about pedal edema with RS. What is the importance? Bilateral pitting pedal edema in a RS condition. What are the possibilities?
Pulmonary embolus,
Congestive
ma'am.
cardiac failure.
Oh, what, doctor?
Pulmonary emboli, ma'am.
Pulmonary emboli. Which pulmonary
What
emboli
pulmonary
cause?
Congestive cardiac
pulmonary.
failure if it is bilateral, ma'am.
Okay, congestive. Shall we put it as cor pulmonary?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. One, right heart failure. One. Then, what else? Hypoproteinemia. When a patient, the cause of expectoration, so much amount of protein loss is there, and generally loss of appetite, patient not taking food well, all that, no? So even hypoproteinemia can be cause of if there is a bilateral pitting pedal edema. Like one doctor said, pulmonary embolism. So what I think he was trying to tell is when there is a deep vein thrombosis. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
So when yes, deep vein thrombosis, usually it will be a unilateral edema. It will be painful. All that sort of a thing only you have to suspect. But in a RS, if that question is asked, one you should tell because of a right heart failure due to cor pulmonale. One it can be due to hypoproteinemia. Okay, now we'll talk about these next. No external, and I think we'll wind up this class. Okay, now no external markers of TB. What are the external markers of TB?
Ma'am, there can be skin involvement in the form of scrophulodderma, ma'am.
Okay, scrophulodderma is not skin. What is scrophulodderma?
Tuberculous lymphadenitis, which passes on to the skin.
Fluid involvement is scrophulodderma. Then, what are the other?
Lupus vulgaris. Lupus vulgaris.
Good. Lupus vulgaris, tinea versicolor. Then,
Kaposi sarcoma. No, ma'am, that's HIV, ma'am.
Erythema nodosum. Phyllectin.
Phlectin, no?
Matted lymph nodes.
Choroid tubercle, flectin, conjunctivitis.
Yeah. So all these are markers of TB. Okay. Now, what are the components of Horner's?
Ma'am, there will be meiosis, ptosis,
Anhydrosis.
Anhydrosis. Enophthalmos.
Loss of cerebral.
Okay. If there is Horner's syndrome, what does it indicate?
Ma'am, it indicates
cervical sympathetic chain is involved.
Maybe a tumor is pressing onto the cervical sympathetic chain.
Yeah. So that means there is a bronchogenic carcinoma which is going to go and involve the sympathetic chain and hence causing Horner's syndrome. It is a component of which syndrome? Right upper lobe, Pancoast tumor. Okay.
Tumor, yes, ma'am.
I think we had quite almost 1.5 hours and more. Shall we continue the next portion tomorrow?
Sure, ma'am.
I think this is overdose of what I have to, otherwise it will go on for 1 more hour. I don't want to extend much. Okay. So we'll stop with this, or you want to finish with vitals?
Ma'am, we'll stop with this, ma'am. We'll continue later.
Okay. Okay, tomorrow, I mean, all are welcome. Whoever wants to join can join. Either we can continue this tomorrow or we can continue later in the next class. Whatever is your wish.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Dr.
Ma'am,
Vinod?
ma'am, I have a doubt,
yes,
ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am,
One by one, you can tell.
Ma'am, why you are saying open case of TB, ma'am?
Open case of TB. Now, suppose the patient has had scrofulloderma. Is it an open case of TB? A patient with scrofulloderma is not going to infect you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, a patient with spinal TB is not going to infect you. A patient with GI tuberculosis is not going to infect you. It's only a patient which is going to have a fibrocavity, cavitatory lesion, or patient is going to have a tuberculous consolidation, or patient who is going to have an endobronchial tuberculosis or laryngeal tuberculosis. These are the group of patients who are going to have a high chance of infecting all. So we call it as an open case of TB. Okay. That is what we mean when we tell that patient has no contact with the open case of tuberculosis.
Ma'am, also, what do we mean by the contact with the case of TB case,
Yes,
ma'am?
ma'am.
When does that become significant, ma'am? Like chronic exposure is needed, or even a single time exposure is sufficient to call it as a contact with TB?
The contact should be like a close contact, like relation. Not even one contact is enough when we are in an immunocompromised state. But generally, usually when there is a prolonged contact. Like as this patient typically had a father who has had TB. So definitely it is a prolonged contact. Okay. That
Ma'am,
is why
one doubt.
generally. Yeah, please tell me.
Ma'am, a typical TB patient, does he present starting with cough, or like he has fever and then he develops cough or something like that? Ma'am?
Usually a fever will be there and then only cough.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Usually it is a fever followed by cough, or it could have been a low-grade fever. Patient would not have appreciated much, but slowly, as you know, that loss of appetite, loss of milk, and slowly the general being goes down, he starts noticing. Usually it will be in the same time. Fever, cough, expectoration, but what we know presented was fever only 2 weeks, whereas cough 3 months. Usually it is with fever only, usually it will be there. Only in an immunocompromised patient, like a diabetic patient, may not have cough at all. May not have fever at all. It can even be a hypothermia. No? That is why the importance of a diabetic background.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, what determines whether TB will become a cavity or fibrosis? What determines which it becomes, ma'am?
Yeah. What determines? Okay. So for that you should ask. I should ask you some question. Now, cell-mediated immunity, right? Is hypersensitive reaction good for us or bad for us?
Bad, ma'am.
Bad. Okay.
When it is able to control the disease, it is good.
Good. When it able to
Otherwise,
control
it's
the
bad.
disease. Otherwise, it is bad. So what happens is all of us are exposed to tuberculosis. No? We are all living in the same atmosphere as our patient is coming. Only the poor people, they come in a very crowded atmosphere and all that. But generally, all of us are going to be exposed to tuberculosis as well. And especially in the hospital setup, all of us are going to be exposed. But this prolonged exposure, one, very important. If you are immunocompromised, you have to be very careful. Number two. Number three, once it goes in, if there are 100 people who get infected with tuberculosis, it's only 10 people who manifest manifest all this, cavity, consolidation, and all that stuff. So in 90%, our cell-mediated immunity is good, so we are able to control the infection. Okay. But in a 10%, it is the hypersensitivity type 4 which will take over, and that is going to cause a lot of damage. I think this is the students what I'm giving. Please go and read up. It is there in the book, and then we will continue the discussion. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
Ma'am, I
Dr.
have
I
another
think,
doubt, ma'am.
yeah, please.
Ma'am, while we are assessing the patient for hemoptysis and sputum production, how we say the quantity, ma'am? Exactly how we can say the ml or?
You cannot tell the ml. Actually, that is so usually how the patient says. எனக்கு அரை கப் வந்தது, ஒரு கப் வந்தது, நிறைய வருது. So based on that, we are going to give approximation. If 1 cup is how much ml? Like that. No, normally 1 cup will be
Yes,
around
ma'am.
150 to 200 ml. So we are going to tell an approximation. Patient is not going to tell you in terms of ml. Patient la ivlo அரை கப் வந்தது, 2 கப் வரும், அப்படியே நிறைய இருமல் நிறைய சளி வரும். All that is the colloquial words they are going to use, and we are going to analyze. So when they say hemoptysis, they are not going to tell 200 ml or 300. Pie full vanduchi, avlo ratham vandadu. That is what they are going to tell you. So based on that approximation, we tell the ml.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you all. It's good. So all of you are asking a lot of doubts and you are involved. Okay. I think the attendance can be given to the registrar by the Patrick or whoever it is. Okay. Thank you all. We'll continue the class later. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.